Previously on the Game On podcast.
And then obviously moving to, as you said, moving over to Melbourne and playing at Richmond. What was the process like going to a big club like Richmond at the time and forcing your way into their senior side?
No, I'm just going to butt in there, Pete. I find nowadays, as we know, a kid gets drafted, they go and play, bang, they're there. It's quite extraordinary for Balme. He's played senior football in Perth, ends up going to Richmond and plays under 19s.
I think that's where I was alluding. Yep.
Yeah, which I find fascinating, Balme, in that regard, and that you were then you'd gone from seniors and then had almost the old-fashioned build-up after that, the other way sort of thing.
Oh, well, yeah, we weren't sort of worried about that. It was a bit of a difference between VFL footy and waffle footy in those days, but quite a significant difference. Not as big a difference as there is nowadays, but there was quite a difference. So I was more than happy to play under 19s. I mean, that was a really challenging program in itself. I played under 19s and reserves in the first year, and then in the second year I played some senior footy later on. But I'd had some knee problems as well. So, no, it was certainly... the fact that I played 4 senior games for Subi was almost, out of the blue in a sense, because I was only a kid. It was really only because Bunt was, trying to find a player, I think. But, I was never put off by that. I thought playing under 19s for Richmond I played in the premiership team in 69, so I was very pleased with that, yeah.
And so then moving through the system, and you're at a powerful club, just describe that, with Tom Hafey and and Graham Richmond, and we'll get onto the Graham Richmond negatives a bit later, but just more the positives at the start, and just being at the Richmond Footy Club.
And who took you under their wing?
Oh, they all did in their own way. It was, Slug Jordan was my coach in the 19s, and he was fantastic. We finished up bloody good friends later on as well. He's a character. Yeah. But Alan Schwab was a very good secretary. They all, the players all took us under their wing as well. It was, it was, even in those days, was quite a, they accepted you and they encouraged you to do well. And it was a bit more challenging, a bit more simple in do what you're bloody told to a degree. But, it was a damn good club. We really enjoyed it, and I did year 12 the first year I was there, so I was still a schoolboy. So, I wasn't really part of the plan in a sense, but it was good fun. They were a great club and very challenging. Tommy was very simple in the way he coached. It was very much, put your head over the ball, try as hard as you can, and kick it as long as you can, and no finessing and all that sort of stuff. So it was a different time, but I'm really good mates with a lot of the blokes I played with, the whole time. So, we were very lucky.
Sportscast SA presents Game On. Game On. South Australians' destination for everything sports. Local, national, and international sports. AFL football, soccer, basketball, golf, baseball, tennis, cricket, and any other sports played in this wide world. And we're going to have a blast doing it. So sit back, relax, and let's do this thing. Welcome to Game On.
Welcome to Game On. My name's Pete, once again joined by Malcolm and Neil Balme. Part 1, we've got Part 2 coming up later today. Was absolutely fantastic in telling us how he got from, obviously, Subiaco over to Richmond.
Yeah, I was privileged, as we said, we spoke to Balme for nearly 80 minutes. So, yeah, absolute privilege to have the great man on and, discuss certainly most things, some things which we
left
couldn't
off
go
the table.
to. Yeah. I could do a different podcast, a late night one in regards with Balme. No, he's huge respect.
Absolutely, and obviously great administrator, and really, started out his career as a young fella. And the last couple of weeks we've had that sort of young fella theme that they've come from the clouds to absolutely make an impact, not only on their football clubs but footy in general.
Yeah, well, you think of it. So Norwood, he's been involved in premierships at Norwood, Geelong and Richmond, and lost one very unluckily at Collingwood. Woodville West Torrens won the flag the year after he left. So it's just so much success overall.
No wonder the Crows were chasing him, and obviously we talked about that in part 2, so looking forward to that.
Yep.
Around the grounds.
Today, mate, we're going to have a good look at the AFL finals. The SANFL, we're going to touch base with last week's game, and we've got a special subject this week of flashbacks for the grand final this week between Sturt and Glenelg, the AFL W and the NRL. But we'll kick off with the AFL Week 2 of the finals. Melbourne and Carlton played an absolute thriller at the MCG.
A thriller of a contest. I agreed, though, that there was a lot of turnovers by both sides, but I think just purely the fact 96,000 there, which was incredible, and the atmosphere, you sort of forgot that. But I agree with John Fidge's comment where he had a real crack at Viney, the last minute and a half, where he couldn't kick over 20 metres on his non-natural foot. So if that right footer goes over Wiedering's head, it just goes to open space, it's probably enough. Also, the Melbourne player where he overcommitted, where he should have just cajoled and made Doherty go back to take his kick, then you're flooding defence. So it's a lot of what ifs.
What ifs, yeah.
And 9 goals, 17. But I want to also have a crack at Melbourne for their selection. Like, they picked Shaki as the sub. Now, that was supposedly due to Gawn being under a cloud because he did play with a broken toe. Well, if you're going to do that,
you might as well have played
Grundy. You've got a certain guy called Grundy still on your list, for goodness sake. It's staggering.
Melbourne had their chances early on. I thought that Carlton just found a way to hang in there, and that's been their modum operatus for the last 10 or 12 weeks, and it certainly served them well. And then, like you said, I was of the opinion, and I'm a Carlton man through and through, and when Lever marked that ball at just off the flank there, back flank, I thought that's about it. And then they had the chance, and then Carlton did take their chances with switching the ball into the middle of the ground. So once again, bad kicking though from Melbourne really did cost them.
And the switch was by Holland, who came on as a sub. And then Melbourne didn't have any of that run. Not only did Holland there, he chased Hunter down as well. He had an impact. And Melbourne, bizarrely, didn't either chose a runner or use Grundy, because Cox has played as a sub for Collingwood this year and come on and rucked and had an impact. So it's not like a ruckman hasn't had an impact as a sub.
Is it a case of them being stubborn with their decision?
I think so, that they just wouldn't go, hang on, hey, let's use him here.
Yep.
But
then Grundy had talked with a few teams before this, but this is the industry though.
Yeah, so what? But the big thing was he hadn't come out and bagged Melbourne. He could have come out and teed off on Melbourne, and he hadn't.
Yep.
He'd still been in the rooms. He showed great character.
Why not play him?
If he plays, I reckon we're talking about Melbourne this week.
So, agreed. So, look, two things from Melbourne point of view. Obviously, bad kicking once again. It's not a matter of them getting it in there. It's obviously a matter of them finishing. I think Melbourne lost this at the selection table, as you just mentioned there. But I think there's one other thing that that has to be sort of pointed out, that I think that they lost the plot basically on the week before with Brayshaw's concussion
and carrying on about it. Yeah, they went way overboard on that for what was a footy accident. It was crazy. And then Pickett almost trying to play the tough role, and he's got one game. So if they won, he wasn't playing this week anyway, and he was probably very lucky not to only get one.
Yes.
He could have got reported 3 or 4 times. He got fined 2 other times. I thought one of those he should have got games for it under the grading. So,
let's flip the coin. Carlton, impressive.
And they get Martin back this week too. I reckon that's pretty important. He's Martin's class. Now, Mackay, you just don't know what he's going to bring.
Yes. I think it unsettles that forward line a little bit. I know Charlie sort of says I like to have him in there as that decoy forward, but Charlie being up and down the ground like he is, you sort of want to still have that flexibility.
Yeah, but mind you, so Payne's in big doubt for Brisbane. Now, if he doesn't come up, and they've got to... Andrews has got to go to Curnow.
Yes.
Who knows? So that means Gardner will probably stand Mackay. So it's a big height advantage for unless they bring Joyce in as the other possibility. But yeah, McCoy is. We all know his ability.
Absolutely.
So,
he's just got to get that around the corner out of his mind. Walsh having an absolute brilliant final series at the moment. And I think it was pointed out a little bit over some of the footy shows. Like you said, there's about 5 million of them at the moment. Yeah. You watch as many as you can. In that, he did miss a big chunk of the pre-season, but he sort of timed his run very, very well and very, very professional.
We think so. His body's hit at September and still got plenty in the tank. He probably did run out a little bit of puff in the last 5 or so minutes, but, geez, he was best on ground by a mile until 5 minutes to go. So,
and Cripps obviously being rewarded for a lot of years, sort of doing a lot of that hard work, and now he's got a few more passengers on the bus, and that roar around the MCG from the Carlton supporters is spine-tingling at best.
Yeah, and I think there'll be a reasonable Carlton representation at the Gabba, so it won't just be a total Brisbane crowd.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and part of that's to do with some of the scheduling that the NRL have obviously put their games on at their times, and the AFL once again not giving the 7-day break, that they probably could have in changing the schedule around for GWS playing on the Saturday night rather than the Brisbane game. So it's very interesting to see how that's going to play out.
They also don't want the minor premier, in this case Collingwood, to have one less day. So I reckon they could have played both on Saturday.
Yep. Fair call. And really make a highlight of the Friday night with the AFLW. So, all right, we'll move on from the Carlton-Melbourne game. Port Adelaide GWS.
Just really too good. I think we looked at the sides and went, well, ability-wise, GWS. And I ended up talking to Crows guy on Sunday. He said, well, ability-wise, it's GWS are better than everyone. Mm-hmm. So we all knew on that. And really, at halftime, they should have been 10 up.
So, they had that 10 or 15-minute period in the second quarter where they could have absolutely blown Port Adelaide out of the water. And once again, some bad kicking there did hurt them a little bit as far as stretching out the lead. But like I said last week, I just felt like GWS are a strong, hard-running team that just don't give any weaknesses. And they did lose a couple of players at the beginning of the year. You sort of weren't sure where they're at, and then new coach, and how's this all going to play out? And it's been a case of Carlton and GWS were sitting 14th and 15th respectively at round 15.
Remarkable.
At round 15, and they've timed their run absolutely perfectly.
And I think GWS previously were relying on their superstars, Kelly, Cameron, and that, which has probably got them to the line in 19.
Yes.
Where I think now they're batting a bit deep, and their role players like a Bedford, Daniels are doing the job. And I reckon their balance up forward is very good with Hogan, Toby Green.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And Cornelia came back in last week and just gave them that little bit more strength around the middle of the ground, and that's where they won the game.
Probably his best game.
Yeah. I think once again, a bit like the Melbourne Carlton game, the Port Adelaide GWS was really one at the selection table on the basis that Port did carry, let's be honest, 3 or 4 players that were definitely either underdone or injured.
Yeah, I'm not really on there. I'm not sure on what other options they had, but on the case of Lysette, they brought him in underdone last week, and then really because his body's so battered, it had only taken 1 week, and he was
gone again. Yeah.
Where I reckon they should have played Hayes. They'd brought him in. He'd done the job. You've gone with your kids in the midfield in terms of Rosie, Butters, Horne-Francis.
Yep.
Why not have gone with Hayes as well? So, and there was no doubt Mackenzie shouldn't have played, but they've gone, well, Jonas is injured. We can't play that. Mm-hmm. Well, they should have had a look at Piscini during the year as a possibility.
Yes.
But, they probably didn't have a huge option. I get where Hinkley was trying to come from, saying, oh, well, we didn't have any other options, but he didn't phrase it too well.
Yes, and I was actually just about to say that there was some wording that came out in that press conference that made me sit up and go, well, hang on, you definitely don't want to be hearing that from your senior coach, sort of going, well, they're young and unprepared and not ready, and it's like, hang on, you've got control of an AFL side here. You need to be planning for these things. Every other team has.
Yeah, it was
bizarre
wording by Hinkley.
I agree.
He hasn't had a good...
No.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about Hinkley now. Obviously, fans are baying for his blood, saying that, they shouldn't have made that decision back in August, or they really shouldn't have made the call back at the beginning of the year saying we won't talk about it until August, and then they sort of got backed into a corner with them doing so well. And I'm of two schools of thought with this.
Yeah, I see both sides, that their run there have been so impressive. You weren't going to know then they were going to end up a month later banged up. So I can see both sides. Yeah, I get it. Look,
do you think that the goal was, obviously the players say that they love having him as the head coach, and they do. Was the goal to get him that next extension, and then when they did get it, did it sort of take the foot off the pedal a little bit? I'm not sure, but
no, I don't. I think they just ended up with guys who were banged up. At that stage, they were fine and flying.
Yep.
So I just think 4 or 5 injuries. Yeah, Mackenzie gets injured 3 times and keeps going. Well, you could see that he wasn't right. So
Port Adelaide fans obviously venting their frustration on
It's
radio.
been a great week in that regard. 5 AA after the game. Even my wife was pissing herself laughing.
Yeah. Look, obviously we're so invested, but did hear Michelangelo Ricci, I think, came out on SEN and sort of saying, look, Port Adelaide are the big fish, the smaller fish in a bigger pond. You can't expect that your SANFL form where you are the bigger fish in a smaller pond producing, finals results every couple of years is going to happen at an AFL level, just with the way it's structured.
And we said that with Tim Jennifer in the interview with Tim about his career, where Port bluffs some premierships, which is a huge achievement. That's not having a go. That's a compliment.
Yes.
They weren't the best side, yet they managed to win flags. And Tim said that himself.
And that's the sign of a great team, isn't it?
Yeah. And so you're not going to bluff on the national stage. And so, Port supporters still – there's a lot of Port supporters who aren't with the real world.
Yep. No, fair call. All right, we move on to this week's games. A couple of big blockbuster prelims. Carlton v Brisbane up at the Gabba.
Look, you expect Brisbane to win, no doubt about that, but
you can't discount Carlton.
Look, I just really hope it's a real good game.
Yep.
I think that's probably the worry. You could actually see 2 blowouts this week, and I hope it's not. I hope they're just 2 great games again.
Prelims can be notorious for absolute blockbusters, or in some occasions it can be blowouts. I think all the pressure's on Brisbane here, to be honest with you.
Yeah, the pressure's on Brisbane and Collingwood. There's no doubt about that. So, while I don't agree with the comment it's a free hit, it is far more. You can hope that Carlton and GWS are a bit freer in their movements.
You would think so, and they have played that way this year. It'll be interesting to see the first 10, 15 minutes as to see who is on the ball. And if Collingwood and Brisbane are on the ball, you pretty much will say they're going to get over the line.
As we said, look, the opposition which GWS have played so far in St Kilda and Port Adelaide isn't probably as good as that, but their ball use has probably still been the best of any side.
And their speed has been huge, and I don't know whether that's going to trouble Collingwood because they're pretty speedy as well. So it's going to be a very interesting game from that point of view.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not a conspiracy theory, but the AFL would absolutely love a Collingwood-Carlton grand final, but I don't think we're going to get that this year. And that's coming, and I'm a Carlton man who would absolutely love that, hands down, but I just don't think that's going to happen.
Look, it'd be more good for the build-up in the week, not so much the day. The day's a sellout anyway, whoever plays, so not so much that way. And you got to remember, so many tickets at the grand final corporate, so it hasn't got that big.
Whereas prelims do have that.
Which I think gives, like, let's be honest, 90-odd thousand there tomorrow night. There was at least 85,000 of them going to be barracking for Collingwood.
Yep. Yeah, huge. All right, so your tip is obviously Brisbane and Collingwood.
Robinson's, because of Brett Hand's involvement with GWS to start with, they were members and they've stayed members, so they're going to have to be very loud to drown out 85,000 Collingwood supporters.
Well, the best way to do that is to get off.
Robinson household.
The best way to do that is to obviously get off to a good start and keep the pressure on. And look, GWS have done it better than anybody this year, so it's going to be very interesting. And I'm like you, I hope it's a close. Both games are very, very close and sort of in the balance at 3/4 time.
I think the other game. Let's also remember the game Brisbane v Port, where Port missed 6 set shots from under 30 metres out. Port should have been in front at half time. So who knows what would have then have happened. So while Brisbane ran away and won by 8 goals, I reckon that flatters them a little bit there.
Yep.
So
it's going to be interesting to see that Carlton, who have been in form as well, whether they can take it to them.
And just put enough pressure.
Agreed.
Force the errors. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, we move on to the SANFL last week. Prelim finals, never easy, but Sturt really showed the way against Adelaide.
Oh, they did, and I was disappointed with Adelaide. Geez, they gave away some shocking free kicks. Crows Port has been whinging on it. I actually thought the umpiring was pretty reasonable, and Crows just gave away some absolute shocking free kicks. And I was with Will Hamill's dad for a while, and that was his point. He was getting so frustrated at the free kicks.
And that
the lack of discipline, it was bizarre.
It hadn't been a part of their game for a period of time throughout the year, and it was like I'm sitting back watching it, sort of going, hang on.
Oh, it was terrible.
Was just in such a big game, you don't want to be giving anything to your opposition, and yet you're giving them a lot of free possession.
And then Adelaide didn't take the game on enough. They were too stop-start defence, didn't run it through. It just takes some risks with the ball movement. It wasn't a great game. The best game for the day last weekend was easily the under-18s game.
We'll talk about that one a little bit later in our extra time big finish. Sturt obviously getting off to a good start in the first quarter, kicking 3 goals, 2 to 3 points, and really from there controlled the game. Adelaide come back a little bit, but just not enough. And Sturt, to their credit, their pressure and their ball movement was good, but it's going to have to step up to another level against Glenelg this weekend in the grand final, and we will talk about that a little bit more in our flashbacks.
Yep.
We'll stay with the SANFL. Congratulations to Harry Grant and Nick Rokar, who took out their club best and first, which were the 1 and 2 in the McGarry.
So, a fitting result there. Look, I think they were both pretty obvious. As a Norban Rokar had, that was a no-brainer.
Yes.
And I thought Harry Grant was pretty obvious at Centrals as well. So
absolutely. Yeah. So congratulations to those guys there. All right, we move on to the AFL W. Adelaide, 47-point winners against Essendon in a pretty good game of AFL W, but their ball movement and their structures have been absolutely first rate, and it was on show at Unley Oval on Saturday. Yeah,
they're running the ball probably a little bit more, give the handball, and the skills are gradually getting better. And so, and the people who bag the women's footy with the score-wise, they keep forgetting that the quarters are considerably shorter distance.
Yes.
It's over 10 minutes a quarter less time. So you think it's over a quarter's difference.
Yep.
And that.
Over the whole game.
And the Crows score in reality was fantastic.
Absolutely.
So,
Essendon, we talked about last week, the top 2 games for the weekend were Essendon and Adelaide, because of their ladder positions.
Yeah.
And we're expecting a blockbuster, but Adelaide really just put the foot to the floor. And
Essendon got the first goal, and they were up at quarter time, but then Adelaide were just way too good after that.
Unbelievable structures, and Matty Clark, who we will talk about a little bit later in one of our other subjects, has really got them firing, considering they did lose a few players when Port Adelaide came into the competition, and also players obviously being moved around throughout the first 6 seasons of the AFLW, and he's maintained his structure very, very well.
And I will chase him up to get him on the show too.
Absolutely, maybe after the AFLW season, or we'll see how we go with that one. And Port Adelaide winning by 8 points against St Kilda, a bit of a gutsy effort.
Came from behind. They were 20-odd points down and came through. Saint kicked a couple. Erin Phillips kicked their first goal for Port
Adelaide.
Brought up the 1,000 possessions.
Yep.
Look, she's...
That's an achievement and a milestone that really needs to be pointed out. That, wow, we've got a player who's changed codes very late in her career, come to a club at Adelaide because there was no Port Adelaide. She plays in premierships with Adelaide. Port Adelaide first get their AFLW team up and running. She puts her hand up, go, look, I've always wanted to play for Port Adelaide because of her father, of course. Then makes the move, knows that it's going to be tough for the first couple of years, and yet still plugging away.
Still contributing.
Absolutely. If she was a male player, she'd be held in very, very high regard.
John Cale said she's the best junior head coach. Now, that's a pretty huge call. So I think that's testimony and proves that point to be totally correct.
Absolutely. All right, mate, we move on. The NRL rugby semi-finals, Melbourne Storm v the Sydney Roosters. Always going to be a bit of a tight game with Melbourne coming out after losing quite convincingly the week before, and the Roosters obviously wanting to keep their winning run going. But they've come out and won 18-13 in a pretty tight and dour contest.
Yeah, they did the job in the end and got through. Catch of a high ball, and they were just just that got through in the end.
Obviously, Melbourne wanting to continue their finals form and their winning run through finals throughout the years and did it once again. The Warriors, a bit of a blowout in this one here against the Newcastle Knights.
Yeah, wasn't it, in the end? So
40-10.
Yeah, not a cliffhanger.
Exactly right. And, the Warriors really coming from lower in the table, a bit like what we've seen this year with GWS coming from 8th. So maybe it is a year of teams going that one step further from in that bottom 4. So interesting to see how it goes. All right, well, so that moves us on to this week's prelim finals. Penrith Panthers v the Storm. Now, this is going to be an absolute belter.
Should be a great game. Real toss of the coin. So, we'll probably follow a little bit more than me in that way, but you'd expect it to go down to the wire.
Absolutely. And then Broncos taking on the Warriors. This one here, again, promises to be an absolute blockbuster. There's a couple of games there that could go either way. Yeah,
very hard. Both really hard games to tip. Both real toss of the coin. John.
I know the sports bettors have got the Broncos and the Panthers obviously in favouritism, but I think that's a little bit to do with the week off.
Yeah.
But, it doesn't mean anything. We'll see how we go. Yep. My money probably would be on the Panthers and the Broncos in the grand final, so we'll see how that plays out. All right, mate, we're going to take a very, very quick break. When we come back, we've got some finals flashbacks.
You're listening to the Game On podcast. We'll be right back after this short break. Flashbacks.
And we kick off our finals flashbacks with Glenelg and Sturt playing in this year's SANFL Grand Final. We'll talk about the last couple of times they've played this year, and then we'll have a little bit of a look at the last time they played each other in a grand final. Now, Sturt played Glenelg in round 1 at Unley Oval. Sturt 12 goals, 880, defeated Glenelg 7-7-49.
Yeah, they did the job. Yeah, Sturt did the job that day, and at that stage, Glenelg, new coach, it was all a little bit up in the air, and they won pretty convincingly there at the start. But then, of course, as we know, the next time they played it, and the game in which I think was promoted brilliantly.
Absolutely. Well, we'll talk about that one in a second. Obviously, Sturt kicking off their season at home with a win against Glenelg. Now, we thought that Sturt and Glenelg were going to be around the mark in that one there, and it sort of gave us a bit of an indication that these two teams are probably going to do okay throughout the season. Sturt continued its dominance in the premiership quarter, in the third quarter of round 1, and winning by 31 points.
Yeah.
And then we move on to the next time that they played, obviously, was at Glenelg Oval, and like you said, promoted brilliantly.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I think the crowd was nearly 8.5 on memory in the end.
10K at the Bay for the King's birthday weekend, which was at Glenelg Oval in round 9, 2023. Glenelg, 23 goals, 12, 150 to Sturt, 6 goals, 9, 45. Obviously, like you said, trying to promote the 10K at the Bay, which they had done previously in 2008, attracting 11,827 fans. Obviously, trying to replicate that in round 9 this year.
The media and the way they did it on the social media was really, everyone should have been trying to listen and learn off that, because it was really, really well done. I think it was about 8.5, nearly 9 in the end. That day was also Norwood played South at Noarlunga. It was Norwood's first win of the year. We were following the scores at Noarlunga, and it was just ridiculous. Hang on. All thinking this is going to be a close game, and it was far from it.
Absolutely, and Glenelg was certainly up for the long weekend game at the Bay. 7-1 in the opening quarter, which was a blitz, to set the tone for the remainder of the day, with Matthew Allen kicking 6 goals, 1, meant that Glenelg were in control, and to rub salt into the wound at half-time, Glenelg put the foot on the floor, kicking 7 goals, 5 to 1 goal in the third quarter.
Yeah.
Really definitely set the tone pretty early, as I said. And do we expect something similar in this game?
I think
in the grand final?
Sturt will block it up. It'll be pretty contested. It'll be whether Glenelg can get it on the outside and use their speed and open it up for McBean and Hosey, Reynolds. They have got the most potent forward line in the competition. There's no doubt about that. So in that way, but I'm sure Sturt will be trying to do what they did last weekend to the Crows and just really keep it in tight.
Absolutely.
And make it a contest and a dour struggle.
Now, these teams obviously haven't played each other for quite some time. Good opportunity over the last couple of weeks to have a little bit of a look at Glenelg and Sturt. And Glenelg moved the ball very, very efficiently. And a team that was not quite in dire straits at the beginning of the year. They lost their coach pretty late into the pre-season. They've had to bring somebody else in. But they haven't missed a beat, really.
Yeah, because it was a very controversial decision not to go with Brett Hand again. A few of us weren't happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got to give Reeves his due, and they've been very good.
Absolutely, and it lends itself to being a great grand final. All right, we're going to take a quick look now at the last 2 minutes of the 1974 grand final.
Here today at Football Park. Their only bad quarter was the third term. Whelan gets the tap down, taken by Nelson. Nelson's got it now after Lloyd was claimed. Umpire Ducker, another good exhibition in the 74 grand final, umpiring his 198th league game. Tap down to Murphy, tackled by Fred Phillis.
Gee, this psycho is going to be hard to pick this afternoon.
Oh, isn't it?
Never. It could go to a Glenelg player too. McFarlane's played well. A tremendous game.
90 seconds remaining before the end of the season.
Davies gets the tap down. Graham hung onto his boot. Colby's got it. He won't give up. Gives it towards Colwell. Colwell tried to jump a player.
That's it.
There's the siren. As Ian Aitken's excited voice told you. And look at the scenes of jubilation there as the Sturt players go wild. They all run embracing each other with the final score. Sturt 9-16 to Glenelg 8-7. You've been viewing on Channel 9 commentators Ian Aitken, Wally May and Max Hall. Well, tremendous scenes here at Football Park. Tremendous scenes here at Football Park as Sturt have just won the 1974 Grand Final, defeating Glenelg. Sturt 9-16 to Glenelg's 8-7. And just to show you how quickly commentators change their opinions, we had the Bays perhaps running away with this one in three-quarter time. After a great third quarter against the Breeze, they're only 5 points down, but Sturt outplayed them in the final term. Wally May with his comments as Paul Bagshaw gets hoisted aloft, the skipper of the victorious Blues.
So he should too, because in the last quarter, Bagshaw was one of the instruments that kept them into the game. Helped by Noonan, a tremendous last quarter, and don't forget Howard in the middle of the ground, in control for 25 minutes because Marker was hurt, went out on the half-forward flank. A tired Bayside, beaten by a better side on the day, the Sturt double blue.
That was Judge Brebner, who just went across and congratulated Sturt coach Jack Odie, and I'm sure Sturt fans would have picked that one up. But there's Jack Odie being congratulated by all and sundry now. He's done a great job with the Blues again in 74.
There we go. The 1974 grand final, Sturt 9 goals, 16-70 to Glenelg 8-7-55. After the minor round, Sturt sat top of the SANFL table with 19 wins and 3 losses for the season, finishing ahead of Port Adelaide, Norwood, Glenelg and West Torrens. Sturt advancing to the second semi-final to play Port Adelaide and winning by 5 points to advance to the grand final, whilst Glenelg's route was a little more challenging from fourth, defeating West Torrens by 36 points, then Norwood by 23 points, and then Port Adelaide by 49 points. And with that momentum being with Glenelg, Sturt needed to be on their game, having a 6 goals 1 to 1 point first quarter that helped Sturt to a dream start. But a fight back from Glenelg in the second quarter meant that the deficit was cut down to 12 points. In a seesawing third quarter, Sturt kicked 0 goals 6 to Glenelg's 2 goals 1, which meant for a blockbuster final quarter. And the minor premiers steadied to eventually win by 15 points in front of 58,113 at Football Park.
Yeah, I remember in terms of the Glenelg had come home strongly, and obviously, so I was 11, so neutral, and that. But I do remember at three-quarter time thinking, well, Glenelg should win from here. They'd had a good third quarter. They're only 5 points down. They've got the breeze. They look like they've got the momentum.
Yep.
But Sturt steadied. Robert Odie had a reasonable last quarter as well. Just a few important things with just a bit of footy now. And that, look, he'd been a controversial sacking at Norwood, and so then he'd gone to Sturt and played under his dad and to win a flag and that. So, yeah, in that way. And Ken Whelan kicked 108 goals, and Ken Whelan he was awesome. Jeez, he was the king of hangers.
Absolutely. And then you've also got Rick Davies in that side there, obviously coached by Jack Odie. Bruce Winter, who we have talked about and we'll talk about a little bit more, Neil Balme tonight on our Past Players, Past Legends, with his involvement at Woodville West Torrens. You're right, some absolute beauty of some names there, and Sturt, just getting the job done, but another great grand final, and this was the last time that they played each other in a grand final, which was 1974. That's a long time between drinks for both these teams.
Considering they're two strong clubs and that over the years, so it is a surprise it's that far back. So it'll be interesting to see what size crowd we get. I've gone 32,616 in the sweep. So we'll see how we go.
All right, well, I'm going to pick 34,812. So there you go. We'll see who's the closest next week. Closest to the pin. We might have a bit of fun with that as well.
Well, hopefully it'll be you, because hopefully the weather should be fine. So hopefully it'll get 35 to 40, hopefully.
Absolutely, and it is an SANFL Grand Final.
Yep.
All right, mate, let's get into this week's Past Players, Past Legends.
Past players, past legends, past legends.
Oh, well, I did. As it turned out, Brian Wilson, who was the president of Woodville, was Carmel's dad, my wife's dad. So I had a bit of a connection with Woodville in its own funny way. But, I really enjoyed it there. The first day we went to training, there was 90 players, I reckon. What the hell are we going to do here? But Bruce, I'm really pleased that Bruce came with me, because we did it all together. And then when I shot through, he was able to, to get the premiership win, which was wonderful. And but he was a great footy thinker as well. So we had a lot of fun though. And my factory was at 822 Port Road, so I just had to walk down the road.
You went far away.
Worked out all right. Well, was that something that the SANFL approached you about, or was that generally the Woodville West Torrens Footy Club?
No, Woodville West Torrens. Yeah. I mean, I can't remember specifically what happened, because I'm getting old. But it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And not that I didn't still believe in Norwood and love Norwood. I thought it was probably my time. I'd been there for a fair while, and it was a good thing to do. So as it turned out, it really helped me in the longer term as well to go to another club. So, and we finished up sadly at Melbourne for a few years, which didn't work as well as we would have liked it to have worked. But
let's get a few things there though, Balme. You did get All Australian coach in '94. You're nice and unlucky. You've got Schwartz, who's pretty close to the best player. He's with Carey as an absolute gun. He gets injured. Lyon gets injured. Tingay, and Todd Viney goes to coach Mark Philippoussis. Like, you're nice and unlucky. You didn't have four of your best, 40 out. You lost four of your best, probably 6 or 7. You were unlucky. God.
Yeah, we were a bit unlucky. And then also they ran out of dough and think they might bloody merge with Hawthorn. And, oh, God, can you imagine how that went? I mean, that was awful. And then all of a sudden, because of that, the Joe Gutnicks of the world come in, and he wouldn't know shit from clay, if you don't mind me my terminology.
No, I don't. I was pretty sure you don't exchange Christmas cards. I worked that out on the way back.
So that was horrible for me. But in a lot of ways, it's the best thing to ever happen, because it said, well, hang on, maybe coaching's not what you should do, but you should stay in footy. And it probably got me to ultimately go to footy admin, which has probably suited me even better than coaching in lots of ways. So, I mean, it's rare that things happen and there's not something good about them. But it was pretty unpleasant and uncomfortable time when Gutnig was around. So, and I haven't really forgiven Melbourne for that to a degree, because it was awful, really.
Oh, getting sacked virtually at half-time over the radio, it was extraordinary. It was bizarre. It was wonderful, wasn't it? Oh, jeez.
Talking about the Melbourne Hawthorn merger, how close was that to happening, or were you involved with some of the discussions with that?
Oh, well, I'd spoken to the Melbourne people, and I had to say that I supported it because that's what the board decided to do. But I thought it was a stupid idea. But it was never really going to happen because Hawthorn didn't want it to happen at all. And it would have made no sense at all, because if you merge Hawthorn and Melbourne, what happens? One of them loses who they are. Maybe they both do. I mean, it was just madness, and they were just strapped for cash and didn't know what to do and didn't know what their next step was, and didn't have the money and all that sort of stuff. So I really felt a bit sorry for them in a way, because people like Ian Ridley and those guys were wonderful people, but they were just battling to survive a bit. But no, it should never have been considered, and was never really going to happen, as it turned out.
No, fair call. I know you did mention this a little bit with Joseph Gutnick. The problems with what I call the front of house and back of house, with a bit of a chefing background, in that if they don't work together, it doesn't work. Did that really mould you into the administrator that you are today with that experience?
I think I already knew that, to be fair, but it certainly did reinforce what I believed in. There's no doubt about that you've got to be honest with people, and they got to trust you, and if they trust you, you've got a decent chance to get the best out of them. And that's not what was happening at that stage, no.
And then the administrative career, Collingwood, you nearly got up to in the grand final there, where ironically a goal umpiring call against Rocker probably cost Collingwood dearly there. So you're unlucky there, and then of course we'll get onto the Geelong side of it with Hales and that side of it. But yeah, great career in administration as well, Balme. Go through some, starting off at Collingwood and all that sort of things.
Yeah, well, the Collingwood at the time was fantastic, and we were a bit stiff. We did lose a couple of grand finals and against the AFL team, because the AFL looked after Brisbane in those days. But that was just the way it was. But we were a little bit stiff, but we were pretty competitive and very strong. And I think I had a reasonable influence there. And I really kind of enjoyed my Collingwood time. But I'd sort of come to the end of it in the end, and I was lucky enough to get to Geelong, who were fantastic. They're wonderful culture. Cookie was fantastic. I mean, Tommy Harley was an old Adelaide mate, as it turned out, and he's done really well. And he's now, Sydney or whatever. So now he's a really good fella. But Geelong was fantastic. I really enjoyed that. Bomber was good fun in the early days, and then we appointed Scotty as well. So I genuinely, I enjoyed the Collingwood time. I really did. But even more so at Geelong, I've still got a lot of time for Geelong. I think they're a really good bunch of people and do things the right way, personally. But I've been lucky. I've had some good things to do in footy, and then I went back to Collingwood for a couple of years because I wanted to help Bucks, and I saw him the other day, and he's a terrific person. But I wasn't really able to quite get that done either, sadly. But that's only because I think they went a bit mad themselves, from inside. But then that led me to going back to the Tigers, which in the end was probably is going to be my legacy in footy, because I'm a Richmond man deep down. Because I played for them, and I've had some wonderful times, and I'm still hanging around there. I'm not doing quite as much as I did before, but still very engaged and very much a Richmond man. And Rick, I can't walk down the street without somebody talking to me, so that's probably not a bad thing, is it?
Not at all. No. Who was instrumental in getting you to Collingwood, in the first place?
Oh, Eddie appointed me. I'm not quite sure what the influence was and who was the ones who knew what they were doing. But no, Eddie certainly appointed me, Eddie Maguire. Yeah.
And you were mates with Mick Malthouse from your Richmond days?
Yeah, I'd played with him at Richmond, so it was terrific. I really loved playing with him. So, but it was quite funny because, sure, he was coaching the first year and then was always going to give it away. And then so Ed comes to us and said, well, what are we going to do about a coach? Oh, the process is there. There's plenty of people out there. Let's go and talk to them all and go through it all. And he said, well, what about Malthouse? Would he be any good? I said, well, yeah, he's been wonderful at the West Coast, and I think he'd be terrific. We should put him through the process. Well, he came back 3 days' time and said, Malthouse is coming to coach us, which is kind of not that helpful to us in terms of footy management, because we weren't able to, talk to him about what we needed from him and what we needed to do and all that. And not that it was a hell of a problem, because Mick was a bloody good coach, but he didn't really feel he felt that he had to satisfy Ed rather than all of us, which it didn't really help us in the long run.
And Mick became a bit too much about Mick in the end too.
I felt that way. I mean, and that's a little bit unkind in a way, but I think he did. But I think, it's model behaviour. You do what you think the club wants you to do. And clearly Ed was running the show, and he couldn't help it either. He was so ego-driven himself, not in a nasty way, but that's what he is. Wouldn't have thought he was doing the wrong thing. But it in footy, you've got to be all on the same page, and you've got to be looking after each other and sacrificing for each other and helping each other, whereas there was a little bit of perhaps selfishness about it, I thought. But that's my opinion. I'm probably a little bit hard on them.
And did Geelong headhunt you, or did you sort of say, look, I need to step back a little bit, and then the discussion started, or how did that all come about?
Oh, fortunately, I was really good, been really close to Gareth Andrews over the years. He had a real estate business in Richmond, and then he actually came and played. He played and then was general manager of footy for us, and then finished up on the board back at Geelong. And he was the one, as much as anyone, who encouraged Geelong to talk to me about the footy management area. So, but I was pretty close to Cookie. Cookie was very good. Brian Cook was very good. So
I always loved the way you mentioned Brian Cook, and you speak of him in the same reverence as Wally. So, that for me shows how much you respected and how much of an influence he was as well. And I love it that it's ironic interviewing Tom Harley. Tom Harley speaks glowingly of Neil Balme and vice versa. Yep. So I've always enjoyed that side of it as well. I interviewed Hales last season at a function in Sydney, and he spoke glowingly of you and obviously your relationship with Tom. And then, let's face it, Tom comes in, he's a little bit of a surprise choice as captain because he wasn't the gun, and you have the problem with Steve Johnson, and you correctly back Hales and the leadership group to fix it, and they did.
Yes, no. Hales is very. He gets it. He gets what footy's all about, which is why he's doing the job he's doing. But it's so much about looking after each other and caring about each other. I mean, you still have to make the hard decisions. If Jono was a complete dickhead, you got to get rid of him. But he wasn't. He was just a bit naughty. So we went to the players wanted to handle it, and they did it really well. But we knew what was going to happen from it, and that was the important. I must admit, I caught up with Dane Swan this morning doing something else, and he was similar to Jono as a bloke, and he'd been involved in a bit of a fight with some people, but he'd gone in to help his mates and all that sort of stuff. And I always remember that Eddie was keen to, we got to give him, 1,000 weeks or burn him off or something. I said, well, hang on a minute. I said, well, what if your son was in that circumstance and his mates were in trouble? What would you want him to do? Would you want him to go in there and help his mates, or would you piss off and look after himself? Oh, yeah, you got a point. So, I mean, that's the way. That's just the way you have to do it. We're only dealing with people, and we can help them if we can. If they're complete dills, well, you get rid of them because you have to, because they're not living to your values. But if they're just a little bit naughty, well, you've got to be a bit understanding of them and put your arm around them a bit. And I think that's where footy's gone. We're much better at that now than we ever were.
Oh, look, and Eddie tries to deny it and says, no, nothing would have happened and all that. But I think D. Swan ending up a Brownlow medalist and a Collingwood great's got a lot to do with N. Balme, a bit more than E. Maguire. So, yeah.
Well, with Geelong, obviously this was a little bit ahead of the time. They had a little bit of a mid-season, not crisis as such, but a bit of a reset and a bit of a re-evaluation of the club mid-year, and it really stood them in good stead from that point onwards with Mark Bomber Thompson.
Oh yeah, it's most of it's all pretty logical. You go, okay, what have we got? Where are we? What are we doing? How are we reacting? Et cetera, et cetera. It's all, it's just people management, really. I mean, it's but you got to be honest about it. You got to look at it. And you got to say, okay, what can we do? And then somehow you've got to encourage the players to enjoy taking responsibility for what's going to happen. Because I've always had this crazy saying that the guy who's got the ball at his feet is CEO of the club. Because if he picks it up, we're going to be all right. If he doesn't pick it up, we're not. And that's the depth of it. I mean, the players are really totally responsible for what happens to us, and we've got to encourage them to take that responsibility and enjoy it and play that way. And that's kind of what we had to do at Geelong to a degree, is say, well, come on, we're good enough for this. You just take your responsibility, enjoy it, look forward to it. Let's do it. We're good enough to do it. And that's, I mean, not every team can say that because every team's not going to win. But if you are good enough and you do it well enough and you control it well enough and you sacrifice yourself for all your teammates and you work for each other, well, the multiplier effect is quite significant. And
it held Geelong in pretty good stead from that point onwards.
Yeah. Well, they were good fun to work with, I must admit, and they hadn't won for a bloody long time, so I took the credit for that as well, as usual.
Fair call.
Yeah, why not, Balme? And you've still got that bag with the brick in it. Yeah, you've still got to carry that around. Yeah.
I do. It's got Richmond ND on it now. It used to have GFC ND on it before.
Balme, I think you've been pretty heavily involved in with the start-up of women's footy, and it's only with that, when I was interviewing you, the article those years ago, where I made the point where I'd been to watch Norwood in the girls in a SANFL Grand Final. They hadn't kicked a goal against South in the minor round, and thought, right, it's more important to be around when you know you're going to lose. Anyone can be around a winner, but let's do the right thing and be around when we're going to lose. And if you told me I'd be at a women game chanting Norwood and yelling out number 35, bat 5, and that sort of thing. Because what really won me over was the girls' buy-in. The guy who misses out, and he's 23rd, 24th.
In a grand final, yep.
25th players, dummies on the dirt and all that sort of thing. The girls was a complete buy-in, and they were just so all together as a group. And Balme said, well, it's funny you say that, because the Richmond 2017 side together was so much for a group. And I said, well, that might explain the result a bit more than we all thought. So I reckon that was a really important point, Balme.
Oh well, it is, and that's the hard thing in footy. If you don't get a game, you think you've been left out. But I mean, it depends on how close you are with your mates and how much you accept that and understand it. I mean, our 17 guys were fantastic, but I must say, if you're talking about the girls, they are so grateful to be involved in this silly game. They're all wonderful, and they'll just get better and better and better as they go. But I mean, it's sometimes a bit hard to sell that story, because if you're not in the team, you think, oh, bugger it, I'm not in the team, so who cares? But if you work together and you commit yourselves together and you understand that at the end of the day, you can only pick 22 blokes or 23 blokes to play, and just accept your role within the club and look after your mates, well, you're a much more powerful organisation and you're a much better person yourself. And then when it's your turn, they're still going to pick you. But if you go against them, they're not going to pick you. So it's selfish in one way because you understand that, but I mean, it's really selfless in so many other ways that you're part of the act, and let's go.
And I think the point there where you said about the girls are so appreciative is just spot on. So, Norwood, we had the showdown in the first round, and so involved in that, and going the Wolf Blast Centre afterwards, and the girls are thanking you for the chance to be in the room. And, it's sort of the other way around than what we get. And, I was, well, no, you're more than welcome. And you just sort of, wow, as an attitude. So it is, as you said, that they are just so engrossed that they're rapt to be a part of the game. They're more the game than probably the footy industry. And I still enjoy that side of it.
It's such a challenge. The poor old girls, because as I like to say to our girls, we've been playing since 1858. You've got a long way to go, and then they have, but they're getting better and better as they go. I saw our girls played Brisbane 2 weeks ago, and it was so much better than they played before, whereas last week they played and they got beaten and didn't play all that well, so they've still got a fair way to go. But the week before they were wonderful. So that's part of it. They'll keep learning, and the game's much more complex now than it ever used to be also, which makes it even harder for them in funny ways.
Well, obviously in 2016 you left Collingwood and came home, as you put it, to Richmond. Dimmer was in the same sort of situation as what Mark Thompson was. Were you able to put an arm around him and sort of say, or mentor him a little bit into say, look, this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to go about it, and then from then onwards, Richmond haven't looked back?
Yeah, to agree, I did. He'd been to the US and done a few things because he realised that he had to change a little bit of what he was doing. He'd been fantastic, but I think principally in 2016, he felt that he had to make sure that the players knew if they did something wrong. And so he was really focusing on that to fix it, which is right, because if it doesn't work, well, you've got to fix it. You've got to do something about it. But my feeling was that he'd been a bit too negative. It was a bit too much of the what the hell did you do that for, rather than, in the same terminology, you can say,
can we do it a different way?
Have a look at that. What do you think you should do now, and how can I help you? Is telling them the same thing. And I think that's what he changed. He changed that because the blokes were sort of hating him to a degree because he's always into them. But he wasn't meaning to be into them. He was trying to help them be better. And I think he changed his way of doing that in 17, which gave us a real shot at it. So, he was a damn good coach. He figured all that out himself. I think he genuinely said, I'm going to make sure that I coach them well and get them to know what they're doing right and wrong. But he was doing it in probably a slightly more negative way than he should have, and then he wasn't. So that really helped us enormously in 17.
And, so
37-year drought broken.
Yes.
I took credit for that as well.
Yeah, don't worry.
So call again.
Out of that, then probably the next, you're a bit unlucky to run into a ramp at Mason Cox in a prelim. And then,
wasn't he fantastic?
Yeah, that night he was unbelievable. Probably never reached anywhere near that level again since. But yeah, it was quite incredible that night. But then, the footy having to move around and COVID, so it's been a bit of a bizarre era as well.
Yeah, it was challenging the other, but we were terrific. We coped with it better than anyone else. I don't quite sure why, but I think we just accepted where we were. So, to win 17 and then 19 and 20 was unbelievable, particularly when you think back to what silly bloody Brendan Gale said sometime before. He said, we're going to have 100,000 members and win 3 flags. And I was like, you got mad. Well, guess what? We got 100,000 members and we won 3 flags. So it's wonderful. It's really beautiful reinforcement for what he believed for our footy club, because he is an outstanding administrator, good person. Lets us do our job, but knows enough to buy in when he needs to buy in. But very good, very good.
And quite incredible, really, where you said Richmond probably did that best and buy-in and all that, where they're negative about playing at Marvel, and I think Hardwick's attitude there has hurt Richmond in the end. So it's quite weird that the buy-in to COVID and be up in Queensland, all in the bubble and all that, yet we don't want to drive 5 minutes down the road to Marvel. It's a weird comparison.
I don't get it. I must admit, I don't get it. We should never have said it, because
it was silly.
My view is you can play on the moon. It doesn't matter where you play. It's only you against them. Exactly. The ground doesn't do anything. So I'm really frustrated by it. I think it's more coincidence than reality, but maybe a few of our players, don't like playing there. But there's no reason. If you had to choose a place to play footy, you'd play in the place that's got a roof, so it doesn't matter whether it rains, and it's got a beautiful surface. So that's where you'd play, wouldn't you? But I guess any of us who play at the MCG love playing at the MCG as well. But so we don't love playing at Footy Park that much because the wind changes at quarter time.
Yes.
The Adelaide Oval is just a touch more comfortable.
It is, isn't it?
Okay, Balme, there's a couple of things we've got to bring up. Modern footy, where we're at. Look, I thought Maynard last night that, thank goodness, the tribunal showed some common sense. I don't want you to comment on this one, but I'm really worried about Laura Kane's first week, I think, trying too hard and trying to place an imprint, and there's a bit of lack of footy nous there. I don't want you to add anything there. That's just my thoughts. But, where the game's at, we understand there's a lot of things happening behind the game legality-wise, and a couple of lawyers I'd love to shoot as well. But we get that it's had to change, but surely the Maynard bit was just a footy accident, for goodness sake. You know, it's not. He's tried to smother. If you're trying to bump someone, tackle someone, there's that physicality side of it. If it goes wrong, we can understand getting banned for that. But a smother, for goodness sake.
Well, if they don't want that, they have to say the rule says you're not allowed to jump in the air to smother.
Yeah.
And if they do that, we get it. But I mean, I must admit, I've you know what I'm like.
Yeah.
But I thought that they should have let him off because it wasn't fair. He didn't do anything wrong.
No.
But I thought he'd get weeks because that's what they've done all year. I mean, we had a kid, Nigel Mansell, Ryan Mansell, who he bumped into a bloke and he got 3 weeks. I mean, there was no intent, and it was issue.
No, you're not allowed to touch. You're not allowed to touch an ace. You're not allowed to touch an ace. That's fair enough. Come on, Balme. Should have got 3 weeks. Not allowed to touch an ace. Yep.
No, but even Acey said
I know.
he shouldn't have been rubbed out.
Yeah.
I mean, so I thought, well, if clearly they're going to give him time because they almost have to the way they've acted throughout the year. But I'm really pleased they didn't because I just don't think it's fair. But I think we're trying to solve the unsolvable.
Yes, and that's the point, that you can't eliminate all physicality from the game. The head must be sacrosanct. We've got to try and help. We all get that. And yes, the game's at it, but you can't eliminate all footy accidents. And that, for mine, was very much just a footy accident. And
well, it's a classic case.
We all feel sorry for Brayshaw.
Yep.
But I also agree that Kane Corn, where he said he doesn't turn to protect himself. He's a real worry. He's one of those, he's tunnel vision and doesn't get the act of protecting himself. And it's unlucky, and we feel sorry for him. But don't hang out the poor person otherwise.
Well, you've also got 168 years of evolution of that people are jumping, tackling. All right, we need to change the tackling and the head high stuff, but the running and jumping to smother the ball has been in the game since day dot.
Yeah, it's very. I mean, it's just almost impossible to. What we've done is we've rubbed blokes out in terms of what's happened to the player, the outcome. The outcome's this, therefore it's someone's fault. And that's why we were worried about the Maynard thing, because clearly something had happened and it was clearly his fault in that he bumped into him, but he certainly didn't mean it. There was no intent or whatever. But it's really challenging. I think they've bitten off more they can chew in a way, and they're doing it for the right reasons. But I'm not quite sure of how we're going to get the outcome. Exactly. It's very challenging.
A lot of grey area at the moment still to work through. So
vitally, Balme, have gone through some health challenges. You had your first ever episode of an epilepsy attack at the age of 70, which is it's unusual, but it is a bit more over as we get older and all that. And you've had now to watch yourself a bit more carefully with your health. As blokes, we've all done it, all been invincible, and a couple of times you probably didn't watch your health afterwards as closely as you now need to. But you now understand exactly what you've got to do, and you've bought in, and there's an epilepsy walk coming up. Fill us all in there, Balme, please. Yeah,
I've always been a little bit naughty with my behaviour, but no, there was certainly no history of epilepsy at all. And I had this bloody amazing seizure and fit, and I was lucky that Carmel was there and looked after me. I finished up in hospital or whatever. But then when a mate of ours works in with the Epilepsy Foundation, and she said, well, can you help us promote this, what's going on around it? And I normally wouldn't do that sort of thing, but I thought, no, it's not a bad idea. And because people are a little bit kind of almost ashamed of being epileptic, if you know what I mean, and they don't talk about it enough.
It's silly.
But also the challenge of epilepsy is they don't know what causes it. It just happens. Yeah. And fortunately, I've got some medication that helps me, and it's controlled the whole seizure thing. But apparently only 70% of the people get that. 30%, they just, their medication doesn't control it. So we do need, some money to try and find out what makes it happen and look after the people who have got it, who the medication doesn't help, etc. So they do the walk for epilepsy all through October, and I'm going to do something with it as well. And we're trying to raise a bit of money for people. So I've been really pleased to support them and help us. I've done, plenty of stuff around the place promoting it, and I've been everywhere talking about it, which is, again, not usually like me, but I'm really pleased and proud that I have, because there's been some wonderful response to it. But we do need for people to, if you go to the Walk for Epilepsy website and look out my name or whatever, and see if you can give $50 or something to help. And if we get enough of those sorts of things, we might be able to do a bit more research and get on top of it. So, I mean, it's something that I'm really proud that I'm supporting and doing.
We'll promote that on our socials as well.
Yeah, I'll certainly do that. And let's be honest too. MMD until Neil Danaher with that was
absolutely. It's not dissimilar to
no,
that at all. It's the same, principally the same.
Yeah. It was funny with that with MMD, and then I did an article on David Palm, and I didn't know till talking to Jenny, David's sister, that Jim Palmy's dad had died of MMD. And that, and geez,
I didn't realise that either.
Yeah. So there's just a lot more. Yeah, you probably can remember Jim back in those days because he was bloody good at the bar, Palmy Senior. That was how he always gave directions. You didn't go down Green Hill Road. You went past the Feathers, and then you turned at the Feathers, drove down, and then you go on that next left, and you'll go past the Kenzie, and then the Marrickville, and So he was a character. He was a character, Palmy Senior.
Oh, I have been to all those places.
Yes. I think we all have, Palmy. All right, Palmy, we'll go through in your hardest opponents.
You can mention a couple. You don't have to mention one or two. You can do 3 or 4.
Oh, there's lots of them. I mean, Jeff South was a beautiful player, but I always struggled to get a kick against David Darcy. Would you believe that?
Yeah, Luke's there. Yep.
But I played on him a couple of times. He played very well, and even Cowboy Neil was always I found difficult to get a kick on. But
he's struggling health-wise as well too. Yeah.
Lots of other ones as well, but. No, some beautiful players playing, and I just enjoyed playing the game. But some of those were hard to get a kick on. It wasn't much fun. But I think Dave might have got a couple of 3 votes against me at some stage.
Of course, best players played, with as well. Like your Richmond side, Bartlett, Sturt, Burke.
If you don't like Bartlett, Sturt, Burke, and Royce Hart, etc., you're not fair dinkum. But there's some beautiful players. I mean, you can't go past, the Careys and that of the world, and the Jakoviches and even Dusty Martin now. It's very hard to find a better player than Dusty. He's such beautiful feeling around the ball, etc. But there's lots of beauties. But
because I've always said Royce Hart, in terms of mate Bushy will be listening, he's a Richmond fanatic, and I said, well, if I'm Royce Hart versus Carey, it's a toss-up, and that's how good a player Royce Hart was.
Oh, Royce is only 6'1.5", 6'2" max or something, but he just
incredible
beautiful
reach.
Jump at the ball, marvellous kick. We busted his gut the whole time. You got everything out of him. He's fantastic. Yeah, great to play with. He was very, very important player for us. Yeah, but it's almost impossible to pick the best player because there's so many really good players around. But Gary Ablett was pretty good, and his young bloke was pretty good as well. And lots of very, very, very good players. I mean, Joel Selwood. If you had to pick a team to play for your life, you'd nearly pick Joel Selwood in it, I reckon.
He's sort of like the Alan Border of batsmen, footballers. Yeah, you pick Selwood to play for your life any day.
Yes, exactly. You would. Yeah.
Your 1994 All-Australian team has some pretty handy names in it as well. Silvani.
Oh, he could play a bit, couldn't he?
Greg Williams, Guy McKenna, Glenn Jakovic.
Blue is beautiful. Yeah, and Jacko, that's what I mean. You just can't go past them, really. They're wonderful. And even in the real old days, I mean, Bobby Skilton's been up as the, whatever he is, the champion of champions, the champions today from the AFL. And I mean, blokes like him, you can't go past them. They're beautiful, beautiful players. I mean, as you said, Ian Stewart before, and I mean, they're just wonderful players.
Now, I have to ask, was there an opportunity for you potentially to come to the Crows?
Oh, yeah, we were very serious about it. And again, I didn't particularly want to leave Richmond. I love Richmond, but Roo had spoken to me quite a bit about the possibility of coming, and it was only really because I had this crazy seizure stuff that my medico said to me, said, "You're crazy if you take on a more anxiety in your work, and I'd recommend that you don't do that." And that's really what made our mind up in the end, because I reckon there was a reasonable chance I probably could have come to help the Crows, and I reckon I could have had a decent influence as well. But it wasn't. It was just they said, "Don't do it. You're crazy if you do it, because who knows what could happen." So, but no, we were certainly serious about it. Yeah. We love Adelaide. I mean, obviously Carmel's family's from Adelaide, and we're, I love living in Adelaide. Had a great time and loved the place. So we were very serious about it, but didn't do it.
Now, Balme did me a real favour at this lunch a couple of weeks ago, Pete, without even realising it. Someone's asked, about, was there a day where everything just went in sync as a player or a coach? And Balme read the room and said, the 1984 SANFL Grand Final. So I've quickly glimpsed around the room and I've seen which people are clapping. So I've made a beeline about my book straight after Balme's got off stage. And I did okay that day, Balme, so don't worry. I was well in front of giving you a lift back to town, so that was greatly appreciated.
Well, it was certainly a wonderful day, I must say. It's they're one of the days you remember very, very, very vividly. Yeah, beautiful.
And you've got a book as well. Do you want to give that a little plug?
Oh, yes. I mean, Anson Cameron wrote a beautiful book called Neil Balme, The Tale of Two Men. And, how it happened is that Carmel and the kids were convinced, trying to say, you should write a book. You've been in footy for 50 years. And I said, well, that's the last thing I want to do, blow my own trumpet. And then they knew that I knew Anson very well. And he'd written about a dozen books, and I'd read them all, and he was a friend of ours anyway. So they said, well, what if we got Anson to write it? And I said, well, now you're talking. But he did a great job, because he interviewed me for ages and got all the stories around it. And then he went out to the real world and got the truth. so the story, it's very good. It's a fantastic, I think, again.
It's a great book.
It's a good footy story book, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love my mentions. I thought they were the highlight of the book too, Balme. So, yeah.
I'm sure you've got an autographed copy.
Yeah, I might have a couple in that regard. There was one moment with Anson and that, and I said to Anson, geez, is it people expect you're just going to give a copy of your book and answer? And Balme's gone, oh, no, Malcolm, you've started him. And away he went. And Anson probably spoke in terms of his frustration in that regard, about the same as Balme does on Joe Goodnick. So it was an interesting conversation for the next few minutes.
He's a good man. He's a terrific man. Yeah.
And you're, sort of Dimmer finishing up, could you sort of see that coming with him, sort of being a bit frustrated, or?
I didn't at all, but that's probably because I'm such a positive bloke, I think, but I didn't see it coming. But I was really proud of him for being trusting us enough to tell us what he felt. And he felt that he wasn't getting his message across, and he felt that he didn't quite have the energy to pick it up, and he probably thought he'd done his work. And that was wonderful that he said that, because it gave us a chance to make a decision on him. And, because in the good old days, the coach would just coach forever until you had to sack him in a way.
Yep.
But it was really, I'm really proud of him for the fact that he was able to tell us the truth. And then people say, oh, we reckon he was already talking to Gold Coast. Now, whether he was or he wasn't, we don't think he was. But even if he were, it doesn't really matter, because we're that proud of him for doing that. He said, footy needs the Damien Hardwicks.
Yeah.
So we're pleased that he's at the Gold Coast. We're not going to barrack for him when he plays us, but we're really pleased that he is, because he's one of our men. We like to look after him. So it was a bit unusual and challenging for us and all that sort of stuff. But it's, in a way, it's given us an opportunity to reset where we are and reorganise ourselves without having to sack someone, having an awful period with that, because the players still love him and respect him enormously, and so there's no nastiness around it, and we've moved on. So, as challenging as it was and has been, it was the best way it could have been dealt with, I thought, and that's where footy clubs we've come a long way. Yeah. In the good old days, if someone left, you hope they break their leg and never do anything ever again. But we don't think that he's one of ours.
Bloody oath.
Yep. Well,
as his King is, and as his Fly McRae, and and from me, Kenny Hinkley is as well. I know too many of them.
Yeah, and that's the way it should be, Barmy. And look,
I think there's no doubt in my mind. Yeah.
And look, as a Norwood per, I love it where you hammer the point that Norwood Football Club is your club, and greatly appreciate that. Always love spending time with you and that, and privileged in that way. But yeah, always as a Norwood, I love you. You really make that point, and it's that we feel that's pretty important, and something greatly appreciated as well, Barmy.
Oh, thank you. No, that's the way I think anyway.
Yes. Yeah.
Mate, I have to thank you for everything that you've provided to footy. 270 games at Norwood, 49 at Woodville West Torrens, 98 at Melbourne as a coach, but more importantly, 176 as a player. My all-time favourite grand final, which we've mentioned on one of our flashback segments here on our podcast, was the 84 grand final, and I reckon I could almost call word for the first quarter of that grand final. So it's been a great honour and a privilege for me to speak to you tonight, and keep up the good work, mate.
Thanks, Barmy.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Malcolm. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks, Barmy, and look forward to catching up, mate. Thanks, Barmy.
Good on you. Thanks, mate.
We've just been speaking with Neil Balme there as part of our part 2 of our Past Players, Past Legends with Neil Balme, and yeah, he's transitioned then from Norwood to obviously Woodville West Torrens, helping out Brucey Winter, and then moving on obviously with Collingwood and Richmond and Geelong
and Melbourne
as part of the AFL program, and the sacking of him at half time. Unbelievable.
Trust me, he does not exchange Christmas cards with Joe Goodney.
Then moving into administration, and he really did see that as his light bulb moment, I suppose, that he did enjoy the administration side of things, and then heading down to Geelong and really turned that club around, and then obviously the same again with Collingwood, and then obviously off to Richmond.
Yeah, and look, I do make the point. I love it that both the huge respect Tom Harley and Neil Balme have for each other is an enjoyment knowing both of them and speaking to both of them, and it's quite funny. It's almost like a carbon copy of hearing the exact same words about the other. So it's enjoyable in that way.
Absolutely, and we thank Balme once again, and his contribution to footy can't be understated, and we're absolutely privileged to have him on board.
Definitely.
Happy days.
All right, happy days today. Happy birthday to a man we mentioned a little bit earlier. Matty Clark turns 50 this week.
And the Crows girls, to their credit, did a really good prank in terms of a shirt, gave it to Matty, and then as he's come out training, they'd all of this whole squad
is wearing
the shirt as well.
Absolutely.
It was really well done, and probably something. Ironically, Adelaide's social media seemed to do a better job on the female side of it, so it was well done by the girls.
Absolutely. All right. Matty Clark drafted in 1990 with the 56th selection in the AFL National Draft from West Gambia to Richmond Football Club.
Yeah, and he was the master of tap work. He was an elite tap ruckman. I admit I have chatted to him about it because that is Riley O'Brien's weakness.
Yes, and I was going to ask about that, whether someone of his standing could be of a benefit or more of a benefit to Riley O'Brien, which I'm sure is happening.
They try, but he does make the point it is the hardest aspect to try and coach, to get a person to teach them feel. And it's almost whether the person's got feel or not.
Absolutely. In 1991, as a 17-year-old, Clark spent his year playing at Richmond under-19s while studying science at Melbourne University. In 1992, Clark wanted a season in Adelaide, despite being traded to Brisbane, but ended up coming back and playing at South Adelaide. Clark moved to the Crows in 2000. In 2005, in absence of a suddenly emerging number one ruckman, Ben Hudson, injury in the Crows' last game of 2006, sidelining for most of the 2007 season. There was talk that Clark may continue for another season, however, retired from football at the end of 2006 after a career high of 248 games over 13 seasons.
I just love how down-to-earth he is. Like, there they were, the Crows, when they played the showdown and how the teams played a scratch match of the leftover players from both clubs. Mm-hmm. There he is, boundary umpiring. And then after the game, in terms, the interview and the billboard behind of the sponsors, and there's an Adelaide staff member saying, "I'll do that," and Matty's going, "No, I'll do it." Packed it down himself and all that. He's down to earth. Then the first thing he did in the Woodville Centre was thank the Norwood Football Club for the day. What a facility! He's just really down to earth.
In 2018, he was surprisingly announced as the Adelaide Crows W coach and has won 2 premierships and obviously has the respect of the playing group, and it was evident this week during his birthday celebrations with the AFL girls. And really, Adelaide are looking to create that club atmosphere. I think that's it. If you look at Adelaide, their women's program is that club atmosphere that they should be trying to build.
And it was interesting just being in the Woodville Centre that night, and it was a Crows function and but you could just see the huge respect all the players have got.
Absolutely.
For Matty Clark, and he's a very good communicator.
Happy birthday to Matty Clark and wishing him the best for the remainder of the AFLW season. And let's hope that we can get him on the podcast and probe a little bit more into some of his football journey.
Yeah, I think leave that one with me.
No worries. All right, we move on to tennis. 1973. The famous Battle of the Sexes match between Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs, and Billie Jean King gets a win over Bobby Riggs in this game.
Yeah, I do remember watching. I was 10. I can actually remember watching that.
And there has been a movie made in the last 4 or 5 years on it.
But I do actually remember watching the game. So it was. Look, Billie Jean was a fair bit younger and more in her prime than Bobby Riggs.
Yep.
So, but it was a bit of fun.
Absolutely, and it really put world tennis on the map in saying that, hey,
it's a good idea.
We want to compete with the men. We think that we can do just as good a job. Yeah, some crowds obviously weren't as into it from the from the female point of view, but this really put a spotlight on it. So fantastic. All right, we move on to baseball. 2013, Alex Rodriguez of the New York Yankees sets an MLB record at the time of 24 Grand Slam home runs. Now, not sure if you're up with the Grand Slam home runs. Certainly sets the crowd alight. 24 of them in a season is not a bad effort.
Incredible. No, I was always a big... I loved baseball at Norwood. I was a regular attendee, especially on the Wednesday nights, supporting the Kensington Cardinals. And at one stage, the whole Kensington side were ex-Norwood High. So it was virtually like a school reunion a fair bit, which would depend whether what time slot, how we all pulled up, whether it was Redley's Club to the Marrickville and Leon's. And, let's just say there were some interesting nights.
On a Wednesday night.
Yes,
I love it. Yes. Absolutely love it. That's a great little stat there. All ex-North players. All right, we move on to cricket. 1986, cricketer Dean Jones, Australian cricketer Dean Jones, scores 210 against India at Madras.
Having done a few coaching clinics with Dino, I may have heard a fair bit about this dig. Look, Dino, I got on well with Dean. Don't get me wrong there, but he did love talking about himself, and he used to do a quiz. And I thought, right. So I went round to all my kids and gave them one question each. Now, his highest score is 210 India.
Yes.
His highest score at Adelaide Oval is this. His highest first class score is this. This. And so he's doing my kids just bang, bang, bang. And Dino goes afterwards, geez, you stitched me up there. I said, bloody oath I did. And Tony Miles said, geez, wish we'd thought of that years ago. So it was... I might have won that one.
Yeah, fair call. And what a great story there with Dean Jones. But, what an unbelievable player. 210 is nothing to be sneezed at.
He was a fascinating person. He was adamant he could read the Kookaburra ball when he was in form. And So he was a fascinating person to talk cricket with.
There are a lot of players who will say that the game slows down for them. They see it as big as a beach ball, so it doesn't surprise me that you could see the logo on the ball. So, all right, and we move on to the SANFL Grand Finals, which we've already talked about briefly, but Sturt in 1969 defeating Glenelg 24-15, 159 to Glenelg 13-16, 94 at Adelaide Oval with a approximate crowd of 55,600.
Pretty sure that's the grand final where Malcolm Greenslade holds the record for the number of goals kicked. I reckon it's 8. I will check that this week, but I reckon it was 8, and that's the record in a grand final.
Bit of a homework there. And then in 1970, Sturt defeating Glenelg once again, 12-13, 85 to 9-10, 64 at Adelaide Oval in front of 48,750. So there's a bit of a purple patch there for both clubs that were playing each other in grand finals.
So it's 3 grand finals at the moment, 3-0 to Sturt. So, yeah, that's an interesting
It is an interesting stat, and that's why I've put it on the run sheet for tonight, that all 3 grand finals so far have gone Sturt's way, but we're backing probably Glenelg in this final, so it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out. All right, let's get into the extra time big finish.
Extra time, big finish.
All right, we stick with the SANFL. We wanted to talk, and you did briefly bring it up a touch earlier, about the 16s and the 18s playing in their grand finals, and congratulations to Centrals defeating Sturt in that under-16s grand final, and in the under-18s, South defeating Sturt in the grand final as well.
Centrals were just that bit too good. Now, Centrals captain Dyson Sharp. Now, let's just go through his year here, Pete. He wins South Australia's best player at the under-16 carnival, overall the best player at the carnival.
Yep.
He wins the under-16s medal and then gets best on ground in the grand final. I did say to Stix Phillips after the game, because Stix coached uni, so I know Stix quite well. I said to him, why didn't you give it to him before the game? You could have shirked quicker the game up. And he said, it's fair call, Roobrook. So, he was. But, yes, Centrals were impressive, and that's Central's first junior premiership in 19 years. So, well done to the Dogs.
Well, overall, Centrals have done very, very well for the year. But let's look at Sturt a little bit here before we get on to the under-18s. Sturt playing an under-16s grand final. All right, they didn't get the chocolates. They also played an under-18s grand final, didn't quite get the chocolates.
2 points.
Sturt are playing Glenelg in the reserves grand final
league.
And in the league.
Yeah,
that is a very, very, very good fillet for the Sturt Football Club.
And they won the wheelchair premiership. I would have been shot by Steve Avery if I hadn't mentioned that.
Yep.
And so I'm trying to think of the women's. I reckon they got knocked out I'm trying to think it was first semi or prelim. They lost to Norwood.
Yep. So to have all of those teams in the finals, they're doing some great things.
Yeah, and look, 16 Centrals were just a bit too good there. Mm-hmm. The 18s grand final was the game of the day.
Yep.
I admit I'm a huge G for Taylor Goad, and so Jason Miller, who played for Norwood, happened to be sitting 3 rows behind us, and I said, look, I've got to be honest, Goad's the guy I'm here to have a look at.
Yep.
And he smiled and said, he's going out with my daughter. And I said, so how tall is your daughter? He said 6'1". Taylor Goad's 6'11".
Right.
So I said, if they end up having kids together, geez, they could be the land of the Giants. And he did say, the first time ever Taylor got home, he made him at 6'5" look like a dwarf walking through the door. So,
fair call.
Yeah.
Absolutely unbelievable that South making the grand final, like you said, game of the day, 2 points, an absolute cliffhanger in the end. I haven't seen a lot of highlights from it, but it did look like a do-or-die battle at the end.
Sid Draper won the medal on the best on ground, the grand final. He's a bottom ager, so he doesn't qualify for the draft this year. Don't worry, he is a distinct chance to be number 1 next year. He is elite.
Keep an eye on that one. Yes. We've broken some news in the past, and we've got a couple more names to add to our
I will
wait and see list.
I will be amazed if he doesn't go top 5 minimum.
Absolutely.
I think he's a distinct chance for number 1.
As we mentioned, Sturt and Glenelg playing off in the reserves grand final should be an absolute belter of a day for both those clubs. And Glenelg take out the Stanley Lewis Trophy in 2023.
Yeah, because Glenelg were minor premiers in league and reserves, and while their 16s and 18s weren't quite as successful as Sturt's there, was the fact
they had enough points
and from the league and reserves.
Absolutely. Yep. And it sort of shows that, right through the grades, we did mention that Central's having a bit of a renaissance coming back, and Sturt have certainly done their job as well. So congratulations to them. All right, we move on to cricket. Travis Head breaks his hand, will hamper him for the upcoming ODI series.
Yeah, they haven't made up their mind whether he's going to make the 15. I think they've still got to decide on how far into the World Cup he'll be available. So we've just got to wait and see on that one.
All right, we move on to AFL trade talk. The Crows looking at Marbia Chol, Harms, Petty, and they're all on the radar. Who out of that do you think is legit and who is just speculation at this stage?
I think Petty speculation. If the Crows got Petty for McAdam, that's an IKEA start the car moment for mine. That'd be a steal. I don't think Harms will. I'm not sure he's very much on the radar. I think he's probably a bit older. I think he'll end up somewhere else. Chol, look, if they pick Chol up, I think they've got to decide what they should. With Himmelberg, Crows should have tried him in defence in their SANFL side to then decide, right, can he play centre half back?
Yep.
Because especially now when Murray went down and Doty was down, they lacked height, and it was a bit of a question mark who was going to play. And Himmelberg had showed he wasn't physical enough to play centre half forward. Let's see how he goes chasing someone and standing someone. So I couldn't work that out. Chol showed a bit at VFL level and all that, but he's inconsistent. Whether they're thinking of him as a defender, we just got to wait and see.
Absolutely. All right, now, where does Duday sit? Because they are lacking defenders. They've got a ready-made defender that's at the club who has come out and sort of said, look, I want to stay at Adelaide as much as I possibly can. I know that there's negotiations that are happening behind the scenes, but it's very interesting that a player would come out and say, look, I want to stay, but where does he sit? Because they need defenders, and yet they're potentially looking to trade one.
Oh, look, let's remember he's had two. He's now had two. It's his second knee reconstruction, so he misses a fair bit of next year. I'm more stunned where Brisbane have offered him a longer tenure and that. So I understand, effectively he's been offered an extra $500,000 or so to go to Brisbane. So I get that. But I also now at the moment, wondering that it's taking so long, have Brisbane got in their player contracts, which some clubs do, bonuses for finishing higher. So if Brisbane actually went through to win the premiership, they might be able to afford Dodo then.
Right.
So that's where I'm thinking is where it could be taking this long. Because if he's going to stay at Adelaide, well,
you would have thought it would have happened by now.
So that's my theory there.
Okay, interesting. Wait and see. I think we're going to find out in the next 5 or 6 days as to how this is going to play out. I hope he stays at Adelaide. I think they need a defender that knows what the system is and can play. Yeah, he's going to miss a chunk of time, but for me, I'm keeping him. That's for sure. All right.
Look, and I love what he does off the ground. He's a magnificent contributor off the ground. He gets life. His role with the disability sector, what he does with Bedford, what he does with Navita. I have enormous respect for Tom Dodie as a person, so I hope he stays.
Absolutely. And Adelaide need good players to hang around. But this week, or last couple of days, we've had a couple of delistings from Adelaide. Andrew McPherson, Jason Haitley, Tarek Newchurch and Tyler Brown have all been informed their contracts will not be renewed. I've
got to be honest, I said those four names when I was at the footy on Sunday.
Yep.
I said I was standing with in the last quarter, I said those four might as well, they can clear their lockers now, and that's not having a crack at any of them. I just thought they were all very obvious for their listings.
I know that the clubs sometimes decide that they're going to re-rookie somebody. Who out of those four are they re-rookieing?
No.
None. Fair call. Mine might have been Newchurch on the X Factor, but defence
He's
can
been
be
given
a
enough of an opportunities, and I've seen him play a lot of times this year now, and he just doesn't work hard enough defensively. He just doesn't do enough. No.
Fair call. Port Adelaide with their 4 list changes at this stage of Riley Bonner, Trent Dumont, Brian Tickle and Nathan Barkla.
I was probably slightly surprised with Riley Bonner. I know he hadn't kicked on, but I thought he may have been still got another year. So,
We'll do the same for Port Adelaide. Is there one out of that 4 that they re-rookie as part of?
I would think Bonner would have to be a chance. Tickle, maybe because he's a height, ruckman, slower developers, all that. But the fact they picked him up in the mid-season draft and now they've delisted him, I'd be surprised, therefore, because that's mid-season draft 18 months ago.
Yep.
So I don't think any of those will be, but Bonner would be the best chance, I would think.
Where does Razzle Dazzle sit?
Yeah, who knows? Who knows yet?
I was surprised that he wasn't in these first 4. I know he did sort of come good at the end of the year in the SANFL, but again...
I can't believe they didn't play him. How McEntee played before Fantasia or Evans was another bizarre selection.
We did talk about that a little bit earlier. Agreed. Yeah. All right. Tennis, the Davis Cup, runners-up in the Davis Cup in 2022 will once again get to compete in the 2023 finals after a pretty stressful 3 or 4 days for the Tennis Australia. They lose to Great Britain in round 1 of their round-robin matches. They then bounce back to beat France and then have to really put the foot to the floor and beat the Swiss quite convincingly, and that's exactly what they did.
Which is a great effort, but I'm sorry, this Davis Cup's so hard to follow. It's bizarre. So it's being paid in Manchester. You're lucky to have 500 people there. For goodness sake, treat the competition with the respect that used to be. As Leighton Hewitt came out this week and said, get it back to home and away.
Yep.
Just treat it properly or don't have it at all.
Absolutely. Can't disagree with anything on there, but I thought Australia showed some real grit there after sort of getting a little bit embarrassed by Great Britain in the first round and really had to get the job done, and some fantastic tennis played from then. Side note on the tennis, Brisbane International is back. They're going to host 1 week. I know Adelaide got 2 weeks last year.
Yeah.
Brisbane are going to take one of those weeks away, which I think is about right.
Yeah, so do I. Didn't sort of have the same appeal 2 weeks in a row. You said, what's happening? Which one's the supposedly bigger tournament?
Who's got the better players?
Yeah, so I actually
points.
reckon that's a better.
Absolutely, and I think that Adelaide did a very, very good job, and quite rightly are back on the international tennis calendar as they should have been. So, and also Brisbane as well. Obviously, Pat Rafter and Ash Barty come out during the week promoting it. You're not going to say no, are you?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. AFL, unfortunately, this week, some passing away of Ron Barassi and Cowboy Neil.
Yeah, and look, also on a SANFL side of things, Dennis McIntosh, father of Gary, condolences.
Our condolences go out to their families, and I can't say any more.
Ron Barassi's an institution in football. Barassi, Curley, Witten.
Yep.
They're probably the greatest promoters side of things. Cowboy Neil, of course, we know that he played in St Kilda's one flag in 66 and kicked 5. He certainly was a big contributor in that game. Coach Centrals over here, standing with the Centrals guys at the first semi. I did get told that it was imminent, and you could certainly tell the immense respect that Greg Smith and Robbo and that had for him, who I was standing with, and that. So very well respected as well, Cowboy, and huge condolences to the McIntosh family.
Absolutely. All right, mate. We're going to finish off with the good, the bad, the ugly for this week.
I'm going to go I'm going to start with bad. I cannot believe Corey Bowen has been appointed to the SANFL Grand Final. When he didn't have the prelim final last week, I thought, good. He's made clangers. He's made 2 errors in law in the previous 2 weeks that he's been put to pasture for the year. When I just clicked on to see the SANFL appointments today, I was literally flabbergasted, gobsmacked. I may have spoken to another umpire who was shattered I can't believe it.
No, fair call. You good for the week, mate?
I think good was in terms of the crowd again, the Carlton Melbourne. That was good that it was such a great contest, and it was wow. The contest and right down to the wire. Some bizarre things in it. Thank goodness Akers' shot went through where he played on, where he really should have gone back, taken up his 30 seconds. So, yeah, that was crazy as well.
And you're ugly for the week?
Well, I think it's good in terms of, I'm going to have it as good and ugly. Good as of enjoyment for the rest of us, ugly with the Port supporters.
Yep.
Yeah, but, geez, it was enjoyable.
I think my good for the week is the Sturt Football Club playing off in all 4 grand finals. I think that is a
very good point.
A big tick for Sturt in that regard. My bad for the week was probably the Melbourne Football Club in not only their selection but their ability to go on with the Maynard Brayshaw incident,
just
which
lost the plot.
Just did lose the plot a little bit. I mean, it was great for me being a Carlton supporter that they did lose the plot, but that's the way it was. And my ugly for the week, I really can't pick one at the moment. I mean, I'm a bit with you with Port Adelaide expecting, and every club should expect what they want to see happen, but in reality, it's not going to happen every 2 years for them.
Oh, no, and there was a couple of the calls, I admit, I reckon the commentators were doing very well not to absolutely cack themselves with laughter. So,
all right, mate, we'll leave it there. We finished another big episode. We had Neil Balme on. We've got big SANFL Grand Final being played here this weekend, and next week we'll see who's the SANFL Premier, and we'll try and get somebody on from the winning club to talk to us about the Grand Final.
And also, it's that glory, best week of the cricket season. It's the week where the Redbacks are still equal top.
Hey, there you go. Nice little stat. All right, mate. We promise to do better next time. And until then, we'll see you next time.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at Sportscast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.